Amsterdam was a baker in a Dutch colonial town, and he owned this very successful bakery. Now the Dutch celebrate what I kind of think of as Christmas. They call St. Nicholas Day on December the 6th. St. Nicholas wore this long red cloak, so Van Amsterdam, in honor of St. Nicholas Day, baked these wonderful, scrumptious little gingerbread cookies, iced them in red and white so they look just like St. Nicholas. Well, they were very successful and people flocked to his store to buy these special cookies. Now, Van Amsterdam was an honest man, and he gave his customers just exactly what they asked for. Not any more, not any less. Exactly what they want. Now, on the days before December the 6th, his shop was very busy. All these people came for these cookies. And the day before, one year, in flew this woman in a long black cloak. And she said, "I have come for a dozen of your St. Nicholas cookies." Taking a tray, Van Amsterdam took them out. He started to wrap them. He had counted out 12. The woman reached out and stopped him. She said, "I asked for a dozen. You have given me only 12. Madam, I give my customers exactly what they ask for. I know that a dozen is 12. I don't give any more or any less." Van Amsterdam, he wasn't a man to bear foolishness. The lady said, "But I asked for 13. You may just keep your cookies." Now the woman turned to go, but she stopped at the door and she looked back at him. She said, "Van Amsterdam, however honest you may be, your heart is small and your fist is tight. Fall again, mount again. Learn how to count again." Then she was gone. From that day on, Van Amsterdam's bakery wasn't as successful as it had been in the past. When he made his bread didn't rise. His pies were either too sweet, too sour. His cakes crumbled. His cookies were either too doughy or burnt. They were never just right like they had been in the past. And soon his customers noticed. And when his customers realized that his baked goods weren't as good as they used to be, they quit coming. And after time, his bakery grew poorer and poorer. And finally, he had lost the last of his customers. Now, a year had passed, and it was around St. Nicholas Day again. And he had baked his cookies, iced them in red and white, and was waiting for these customers to come and get their cookies like they did every single year. No one showed up. "That woman has bewitched me." He sat there and he thought and he thought, and he was a little sad. He went home that night and he sat there thinking, "St. Nicholas, I wish you could help me now." He fell asleep, and that night he dreamed. And in his dream was this crowded place with all these children. And in the midst was St. Nicholas himself. Now, St. Nicholas kept pulling out these gifts, and he would give them to this child. He'd pull out a gift, he'd give it to this child. Pull out another one, and he just kept on and kept on giving. But he noticed something strange. The more that St. Nicholas gave, and the more he passed out, there was always more to give. In fact, the more he took from his bag, the more it seemed to hold. And then Nicholas handed a gift to Van Amsterdam, and it was one of the baker's own cookies. It was that perfect St. Nicholas cookie, iced in red and white, looked just like St. Nicholas himself. When Van Amsterdam looked up to thank St. Nicholas, it wasn't St. Nicholas there. It was the woman in the long black cloak. He woke up and he was startled. I would be too if I woke up from a dream like that. And he was just startled. And he sat there and he thought, I always give my customers exactly what they pay for. Not any more and not any less. But why not give them more? So the next morning, on St. Nicholas Day, the baker rose up and he ran to work. And he baked a batch, the finest batch yet that he's ever made of his St. Nicholas cookies. He iced them perfectly in red and white, and he baked them. And they looked just like St. Nicholas. Finest batch yet. When he finished, the door flew open, and in walked that old woman in the long black cloak. She said, I have come for a dozen of your St. Nicholas cookies. So Van Amsterdam went over, pulled out the cookie sheet, and he counted out 12 cookies and one more. From now on in this store, a dozen is 13. The lady looked at him and she said, you have learned to count well. You will surely be rewarded. And she was on her way. From that day on, Van Amsterdam's store was more successful than it had ever been. More than Van Amsterdam could have ever imagined. The news of this started spreading around. More and more people came to his store because when they ordered 12, they got 13. His business became so successful that more and more bakers started to practice this. More and more bakers decided that when someone ordered 12, they gave them 13 out of the generosity of their heart. When it spread, the tradition has kept on today. So that's why they call it a baker's dozen. And that's why last week when I went to the bakery and I ordered 2 dozen cookies for you all, and when I brought them back and I opened one of the dozen up and there were 13, I said, oh, they were generous. They gave me a baker's dozen. You looked at me kind of like I was crazy. So I decided I wanted to tell you this tale so that you knew where a baker's dozen came from.